All right? So this sounds like a subtle shift, going from the worker to the consumer, okay? But what this meant was a revolution in society, a revolution in politics. So remember that an example of the worker has to have political consciousness in order to protect his or her rights, in order to organize and unify and push for favorable political reforms, okay? That's what the worker must do, okay? But now let's think about the mentality of the consumer. And to do this, let's do another thought experiment. And the thought experiment is this. Everyone in the school, about 500 people, I decide to give everyone $1 million US, okay? So everyone in the school has exactly $1 million US to spend. What happens now? Think about this. What happens now? Use your imagination. What happens? What's the first thing you do? What's the first thing you do? I've given you $1 million. What do you do with it? Well, the first thing you do is buy something, right? What do you want to buy? $1 million is a lot of money. What do you want to buy, Nab? You buy a house, right? That's great. That's a great purchase. Then what do you do? Then what do you do? Okay, first thing is Nab buys a house. Then what does he do? Excuse me? Buy furniture. Then what does he do? There's something that he must do that's very important. What does he buy the house? What does he want to do? He wants to take pictures and post it on social media, right? So everyone sees it on social media. Then you see this. Nab has this huge house in Beijing with lots of fancy furniture. What do you do now? You also want to buy a house. But what kind of house? A bigger house, right? And then what do you do? You also post pictures, okay? Then how do other people feel? You think this is funny, okay? But this happens all the time. So very quickly, what happens in the school? And you all spend your money, and you all go into debt, right? Because you're in competition with each other to buy the biggest thing. And $1 million is a lot of money, but it's not enough to buy everything, right? So you go into debt. You borrow more money to buy more things. And then what happens? And then what happens? How do you guys feel about each other? Do you guys have lunch together? Do you guys have dinner together? Do you guys like to share homework together? You guys hate each other, right? At the end of the day, what will happen is you all go into debt and you all hate each other, right? So that's consumerism. This is what consumerism is. Consumerism creates a competition in society for prestige, okay? To see who can post the nicest social media pictures. This leads to the individualization or the optimization of you, okay? In other words, you are now unable to act together. You don't want to organize. You don't want to act in solidarity, okay? And ultimately, this means that you develop economic logic, okay? And what is economic logic? It's to see the world only through the lens of capital. Okay, does it make sense? So when you see someone and you're like, okay, well, do I want to date this person? You don't ask, oh, is this person a nice person? You ask yourself, how much money does this person have? Okay, do you understand? You use economic logic in order to understand the world and to reason and analyze the world, okay? Now, let me ask you this question. Today, is this how China works? Is this how the world works? The answer is yes, okay? Are you like this? Yes, you are like this, okay? You've been brainwashed into thinking that this is the only way to behave and to think. You're in school. Why are you in school? So you can get a good job. Why? To make money. And so you can buy things, okay? You understand? That's how you all think. But there are different ways to think about school, right? You're like, I'm in school to learn, to open my mind, to have an imagination, to think critically about the world, right? And that was the way we thought about school when the workers were dominant. But now that consumers are dominant, all we think about is, how do I get a good job? How do I buy a bigger house? Because I want to post it on social media. Okay? So, if you think about this, what this really is the perfection of slavery. Okay? Does it make sense? What does this phrase mean? The perfection of slavery. Yeah, you become a slave of the money, but what? Why is this perfect? We don't even realize it. Yes, okay. You understand? If you're a slave, you rebel, right? But if you don't know you're a slave, and you like this, you choose this, then you will never rebel, okay? So the consumerism is the perfection of slavery, okay? And that's why Francis Fukuyama thinks that consumerism is the end of history, because it is a system that achieves what the elites want, and the masses are unwilling and unable to protest and rebel. Okay, does that make sense? It's a perfect system. Okay, so, but there are certain civilizations that rebel against slavery intrinsically. It is in their nature to rebel against slavery. And one of these civilizations is the Russian civilization. Okay? So when you impose slavery on Russians, they become corrupt, they become alcoholics, and they refuse to have babies. That is why Russia is failing as a society, because slavery is being imposed on Russians by the Westerners, and the Russians refuse to be slaves. But because this system of consumerism is so perfect, Russian people lack a understanding of how to rebel against the system, and that's why Russia is falling apart. Okay? That is a Putin argument. Does that make sense? Okay? In other words, consumerism has corrupted the Russian soul. And Russians have chosen to be corrupted by consumerism. Okay, so does it make sense? So what Vladimir Putin must do is free his people, even though they may enjoy prison, okay? Even though Russians may enjoy slavery, Putin is still going to free his people. And he's going to do it by creating a new concept to combat consumerism, okay? So we've gone from the worker to the consumer, and Putin is going to introduce a new concept called the warrior. The consumer is a person, an individual, who acts alone and does so to preserve his or her life, okay? The consumer is a coward. The consumer lacks imagination. The consumer is alienated. The warrior is different. The warrior is an individual who sees that through his actions, he or she can shape the direction of history. I can make my own reality through my courage and through my imagination and by acting with others. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So let's do another thought experiment to understand the warrior concept. let's just say that, okay, in this school, I've given everyone $1 million, and now you hate each other, okay? Then what happens is I put you on a plane, and I take you all to an island, okay? And you're on this island, and unfortunately on this island, there are millions and millions of flesh-eating monkeys. They want to eat you, okay? But you hate each other. You don't want to work together. What happens now? What happens now? Yeah, that's right. If you don't do anything, everyone gets eaten by a monkey, right? But what are you going to do? How? You will fight the monkeys by, how will you fight the monkeys? Okay, what's going to happen is that everyone is going to put aside the differences and work together to fight the monkeys, okay? And how will you feel in this process? Are you going to be happy or depressed? You're going to be happy. Why? Exactly. You're all working towards the same goal, okay? Structure, meaning, and purpose, okay? That's what war does. War gives you structure, meaning, and purpose so you feel happy about yourself, okay? Now, let's say that during this war, like Celine dies, okay? Now what happens? What does death do now? Yeah? Yes. And so Celine dies, she becomes a martyr, you all celebrate her, remember her, you give her a great funeral, and then what do? You fight harder, do you understand? Because the death gives you purpose. Her death makes your life much more valuable to you and to others, okay? Not only do you celebrate her life, but you celebrate your own life, okay? All right, now let's just say that the monkeys are coming, okay? And there's a bridge. There's a bridge. And Jack is standing on this bridge. And there are 10 of you on the other side, okay? So Jack has a choice. He can either cut the bridge and kill himself and save the others, or he can run and possibly all get killed, right, by the monkeys. What does Jack do? For sure, he will do this. What will he do? He's going to sacrifice himself, okay? Do you understand? We've seen this in war over and over. Okay? That's what war does to people. It gives you structure, meaning, and purpose, and it makes you a stronger, more disciplined person. Okay? Does that make sense? Right? So that's the thought experiment.